Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
And we are literary agents who took our popular blog to YouTube. For the past couple of weeks, this is the second week, we have been talking about what you need to get a job in publishing. So if you haven't seen our video on resumes, you should go look at it. But today we're talking about the cover letter, which is kind of my favorite. I'm not gonna lie, I love a good cover letter.
Well, I mean, it's the absolute most important thing of your whole package.
I agree. Half the times, I might not even read the resume if the cover letter doesn't do it for me.
I would say more than half the time I don't read the resume.
Probably. But I also love to write a good cover letter.
Really?
I do. I've written a couple, not for myself.
Side hustle?
Huh? I should. I've written resumes. I mean, I've written cover letters for like family members and stuff. They're fun to write.
Well, I mean, you know, you're a writer and you write pitch letters, and you know, a cover letter is essentially a query letter for you.
For you.
So, you know, really just watch our query letter things and we'll see you later.
Well, maybe not. So first, a cover letter is a one-page letter addressed to the hiring manager. If you have their name better included, I mean. Basically talking about you and why you're right for the position. This goes with your resume before it.
Yeah, can I say body of email? It should be in the body of the email. I got a lot that were attachments, and you know, when you're interviewing for a job, just like when you're pitching a book, you want to make everything as in your face as possible. So cut and paste your query letter into the body of the email and then attach the resume. Okay,
but would you also attach the cover letter or no?
No, because it's in the email.
Okay, that's interesting. Some people, though, always look at the requirements of what they're looking for the application, because some people will require you to paste it in the body of to attach it.
Then attach it, but attach it as a PDF, because if I open my email, the PDF comes up and I can read it.
Right.
Versus a Word doc.
Right. So it's always great to have a document form of it, because a PDF form of it, because also if you're applying to a big publisher like Penguin, they have a portal where you have to also like upload.
Yeah, well, that's different. If there's a portal, that's different.
Yeah. So just so that we're covering all our bases here. Anyway.
Yeah. So now that you have your cover letter, James, you address it. You already said you address it to hiring manager. If you have the person's name, use that.
Yes.
And then you would have an introductory paragraph.
Right. And I think that's, I mean, again, that is your basic who I am, what I'm coming for, what I'm applying for. So my name is whatever your name is. I am a this. I went to school here. I'm applying for your position because I think I would this. Something like that.
Yeah, and if you can add some spark to it, do so. I mean, the whole idea is you want your resume and your cover letter to sparkle. You don't have to personalize it. Like, you don't have to say, you know, I've been reading the BookEnds blog, or I've been following you on YouTube, although that's great.
Yeah, that never hurts.
If you don't know that much about the place you're applying, that's fine, but you know about yourself. So what's going to make you sparkle? And just do not say, I've been a reader and I've loved books my entire life, because everybody says that. Everybody talks about how they've loved books since they were little, and they talked about the first book they read when they were 7, and I don't care.
I think we just assume it at this point. You read a great book when you were 6, and you have loved them ever since.
One of my favorite lines when I was an assistant, a friend and a fellow assistant turned to me and I said something about something nerd, and she looked at me and she goes, "We're all nerds. This is why we're in publishing." I just loved that. It was like, you're right, because we all spent our lives reading.
Yep, exactly. But this is your space to sort of take that and take it to the next level. Yep. This is who I am, right? We know that you love reading, or else you wouldn't be applying for a job in publishing. And this is why I am perfect for what you're looking for. Yeah,
and try to dig out something personal. You know, that I can't even think what it would be, but you know, I spent my summer, you know, honestly, if you can make a connection to the publisher or the agency, even better. You know, start reading the acknowledgments of the books you're reading. And you're not going to be able to do this with every job application, but if you can say, you know, I just read Melissa Payne's Memories in the Drift. I saw you represented it. and I really feel like we have a similar taste in books.
Right.
Would be a great, like, immediately I would be like, oh, nice. This person knows who we are and is making that personal connection.
Right. And that's what it is too. Like, you want to give that one little thing, which we talked about in the resume, that's going to make us remember you.
Yeah.
I remember we were just doing this and we read one that was hilarious. It was from top to bottom so funny. I still remember the applicant's name, and we were talking about it over and over as the funny one, and something that just made it stick out to us, and we kept thinking about and coming back to.
Well, in that particular one, they wrote their cover letter like it was a dating profile, like they were applying for a dating profile, and it was so funny. I don't necessarily think you have to go that over the top, but you know what? If it feels awkward to write the cover letter, say. I find cover letters so awkward because, you know, I always feel like I'm asking someone out on a date, you know, but blah, 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 blah. Like try to find your comfort zone with it.
Well, and that's the thing, like a resume it's not so regimented where it has to have all these things in a certain sort of way, but in a way it kind of does. Like, you have to have these points and sort of talk about what goes on a traditional resume. But the cover letter gives you a freedom to introduce that resume.
Yeah, a resume is pretty formal and standard, and the cover letter is where your personality shines through.
Right.
It's sort of like if you have to wear a uniform, but you're allowed to accessorize. So like the scarf is where my personality shines through because everything else is just basic black.
I wish I could find my resume for when I applied as an intern to BookEnds, because I'm pretty sure it was slightly sarcastic, and I did reference the fact that I had no idea what an agent did. But I learned about it. I learned about an agent through the acknowledgments, and that's how I came to apply to agencies.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I had no idea. I did my research, and that's the cover letter.
I mean, I think if you were watching this video and you're applying to any agency and say, I didn't know anything about literary agents until I watched a YouTube video, and suddenly I knew that I wanted to check this out.
Right.
I mean, we in publishing know we're this weird side thing that nobody knows about. I mean, nobody knows who agents are outside of the publishing business. And authors, until they're told they have to get an agent, don't even know what agents are.
That is true.
So we don't expect you to know what an agent is. So I think it's okay to say that I just discovered this thing called an agent, and I really think this is the job I want.
Right. So I think there's all of that room to be playful, but I also think the cover letter has to accomplish a few key things, right? Yeah. So the most important thing, which is the personality, we kind of covered, but you also have to tell the employer why you are the person special enough to take this job. Yes, and it cannot be a regurgitation of the resume. Right, and that's what I was getting at, because everything that you want us to know in terms of like skills and stuff like that is going to be in the resume, and you can definitely like talk about some of them, or really the key ones and how they make you perfect for this particular job, but it shouldn't be just this, and this, and then I turn to the resume and it's all the same stuff. Right, so I think the cover letter gives you the opportunity to embellish on what about those skills that you want, what about you that you want somebody to know that you can't find a spot for in the resume. So, you know, if I feel like, you know, it would be important to tell somebody that I'm a super fast reader and I can read a book in a night. I mean, honestly, in this job, you kind of have to a lot. It's not a bad thing to mention. Probably doesn't have a spot on your resume. Right. And I think we talked in our resume video, if you worked in a bookstore and you curated a science fiction display. Yeah. That's not unlike curating a list. So, hey, I put together this end cap of science fiction books and realized I really loved pulling together my favorite stories, and that would make me perfect to be an agent, or something like that. Or so, one of the things I was most known for is my ability to pitch a book to customers. Exactly. All of those things go a long way in saying, this is why I think I am good for this job. Yeah. Even if they might feel smaller or maybe not as significant as, hey, I have done 2 years in this school, or 3 years doing this, or worked for this program. Right. That's all going to come across in your resume, and you can always pull on that a bit, but it's those things, the smaller things that make you stand out, I think. Yeah, no, I agree. It really just, I can't reiterate enough.
it's what makes you special. And, you know, we talk about query letters and what your book's hook is and what makes it stand out and different. You know, if you're writing a mystery, what makes your mystery different, that when readers see it, they're like, wow, this mystery could be the same as all the others, but I'm interested in this because, you know, it's
what's your hook?
Right. What's your hook? So as a person, what's your hook? What's going to make me pick you out of 100 cover letters and go, this person made me smile, sounds interesting, sounds special, sounds like the person I need. And I think that's one of the things that you can also consider is, what do you bring to the job? So we'll talk about this in an interview, but one of the questions I always want answered in an interview is, what are you going to bring for me? What are you going to bring me that I don't necessarily have? And keeping that in mind when you're writing the cover letter can be make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this on the channel when Tracy was on. We talked about how she specifically looked for agencies that didn't have as big of a children's department so that she can then come on and help build that. Yeah. And that was part of her hook. And that's how she sold herself. And hey, it worked out.
Yeah, well, it's almost telling somebody something they didn't even know they needed.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what that cover letter should do. You should convince me that I need you on my team.
That's exactly what it should do.
So now there's not always a place for it on a cover letter depending on what angle you take, but I think I also like to see sort of that you are engaged with recent published books and that you are reading things that are current.
Yeah, and you know, we probably should have put this in the resume section because I do think this could be put in the resume if you don't have a spot for it in the cover letter. But I think a final paragraph or somewhere in the paragraph, I mean, it could even be the first, you know, sort of the opening, but naming more recent books that you've read. They don't have to be the last 3 books. They don't have to be, you know, but the books that you've read most recently, I would say maybe 2 or 3, more than 1 is probably useful. The thing is when you look for a job in publishing, the place hiring you wants to know that your book aesthetic fits what they do. So if you only read books that were assigned to you in college, then you're probably not a good fit for any publishing.
Which I should say, I have had many interviews with interns where the most recent books, the only books that they've read recently are Jane Austen and Charles Dickens and books like that. All great books, merit for them, right? But it also shows me that you're not reading outside of what you have been assigned to read.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might love those books and you might have chosen them, but
publishing has come a long way.
But you're not in tune with the current market, which is part of the job, and part of any assistant job in editorial or agenting will also be sort of evaluating books to either represent or buy for the publisher. And if the last book you read was Dickens, it's going to be hard to evaluate what's going to be good in the current market.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely include some information, and also pay attention to where you're applying. This is really important. Because if you're applying to Harlequin, which is a romance-centric publishing house, and the last 3 books you read are business books and a middle grade, you're not a good fit for Harlequin. And that's what they're going to see in that. Versus, you know, pick out the romance, you know, books that you've read. And if you haven't, go get some romance books, put them on your cover letter, and then read them.
I think too that's often an interview question, at least for me. I usually ask that.
Always. It's always an interview. I mean, come on. There's nothing we love more in publishing than to talk about books. That's all we do.
Right. So that's why you said put them on your resume and then read them. Make sure you read them, because in part 3 of this series, we will talk about how that could bite you in the ass. So you can, I mean, anybody can go on Barnes & Noble and pull like bestsellers off of that and throw them on the list, right? You could do that, sure, but you still want to be able to talk about them with some sense of authority.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be an exact match. You know, it just, you know, if you're applying for a position with an agency or a publisher that's commercial heavy, then you need to be reading commercial fiction. If what you've been reading is more literary fiction, then you're not going to seem a good fit for that house. So even if you've been reading mostly mysteries or thrillers, you have that sensibility for a commercial house or a commercial agency.
But another thing too, if you are reading outside of what that house does, you can always sort of relate what that book has taught you about books in general, or maybe what that book taught you about editing, or you notice something about this character development or story like that. If you really wanted to include those on your resume, but sort of take what you learned from them. And I think that would be great too, just to show that you're reading a little more critically, which is what being in publishing is.
Well, and I was going to say, all of this sounds like a lot of sort of busy work.
Right.
But it does really, when you get that job, this is all stuff that takes those next steps pretty quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And it's stuff that we might not advertise, or it might not look like we're doing all the time, but we are always doing in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even if we're watching a TV show, we're criticizing the writing and the story, and that all informs our job.
And we're also thinking about whether that could be a book.
Exactly.
If it's not already a book. I mean, that's pretty much all we do all day is talk about books.
Right. Our job is, I always say our job is story. Like, we are in the business of story. Yeah. So we can tell a good story from a bad story, and that can be applied across genres. So what are you learning from those, even if they're not entirely a match to that?
Yeah.
And then obviously from there, once you've got all your personality and everything on there that's going to hook an agent, sign it off. Don't forget to sign it. So many people forget to sign it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still a letter.
Yes, it's still a letter. So you should still have your phone number, your email address, your name, all of that, how to contact you information in case the resume and the cover letter are printed and are separated or something like that. Don't assume they'll stay together. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if someone, like you said, takes the resume and then copies the cover letter into something because they want to print them or anything like that. They still want to have your information on there. So. Yeah. Okay, well, we hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about the cover letter, feel free to drop them in the comments and we will try and get you an answer. If not, and you missed the resume video, go watch that, or stay tuned for our interview video, which is coming soon.